Until now, our application was built from one type of components, that is, activities. They are very good if we need a user interface. However, sometimes we have situations where instead of the user interface, we only need a component which executes certain actions. In such a case, the best solution is to use a service, because it may be launched without any action from the side of the user. It may work in the background and perform certain operations. A service is characterized by the lack of a user interface. We usually place things which have to last a long time here, even if the user exits the activity or there isn't one. With a service, the application creator has an influence on the moment of the starting and finishing of the service. Thanks to this, if he or she wants to perform a lengthy operation, they can start it and finish it the moment the service operating in the background is no longer needed. A typical application for the service is, for instance, to play audio in the background or download data. All kinds of instant messengers use services to maintain a constant connection with the server as well as to send and receive data. Even if the user interface is not running at a certain moment, the music may still play, which means that a certain operation is still maintained. A fairly often used solution is to use an activity as a method to control what takes place in the server. This is the case in music players. Usually, the player includes an activity whose task is to control the service and a service responsible for playing and controlling what is being played. In case of standard services inheriting from the service class, the entire code called inside the service is executed in the UI thread. It's good to remember about that because on the one hand, we have a code which is not started due to the user interface, and on the other hand, it's a code which blocks the interface. That's why for most services, it's necessary to start an additional thread and deal with the synchronization between the thread responsible for performing certain actions and the thread used to communicate with other components. However, there is a special service subclass called intent service. It allows performing short-term operations, but usually longer than in the case of the async task, which, as we know, end after some time. It's typically used for downloading files. We start an intent service in order to download a file. It takes a longer but specified time. The moment this operation ends, the service ends as well. A big advantage of intent service is that it supports task queuing. Each intent used to start a service is put in a queue. The moment the execution of one service ends, another intent is removed from the queue and another service instance is started. Thanks to this, we can, for instance, order more file downloads which will be carried out in sequence by the queuing mechanism. The main advantage of intent service is that we don't have to care about creating separate threads. The code executed in the intent service is started in a separate thread which is created especially for this purpose. In our example, we'll mainly deal with the intent service, because it ideally matches our task. This is a data download, which is usually a short operation, and its task is just to download data and save it to the database. In the case of standard services, we're dealing with two types. There can be bounded and unbounded services. An unbounded service is very loosely bound with the rest of the code. It reacts to commands sent as intents. Actually, the only way of controlling this service is to send the intents handled in the onStart command method. This method is executed each time an intent is sent to our service. Thanks to this, we can control what happens inside the service by sending objects that include a set of data for controlling a service. A bounded service is a much more interesting solution. This service binds itself temporarily to an activity, so it gains the possibility of direct control by means of calling methods. Because of this, we don't have to create and send special intent type objects. Here we have the direct call of methods via a certain interface which is shared by our service. The moment an activity stops being interested in such a service or is disconnected, it's automatically disconnected from such a service. Due to this, we temporarily lose access to this interface, but in a moment we can obtain a connection with another service. As services have no user interface as such, and sometimes we want to inform the user that a certain action took place, a notification mechanism is necessary. Notifications are fairly often used with services. They appear at the top of the screen in the notification area bar. In most cases, a notification includes an icon displayed the moment the element appears and a certain view which appears after expanding the notification area. The purpose of the notification is to inform the user that a certain event took place while he or she was present in another part of the application or somewhere else entirely. A notification may be started by both services and other types of components, such as activity or broadcast receiver. A very important feature of a notification is the possibility to execute an action without the need to start the application. For instance, we have a notification referring to the music player. After expanding such a notification, we can press a button which makes us go to the next song. Thanks to this, we don't have to start an application to find a screen where we can switch songs. From the notification, we can get information about the song which is played, as well as the possibility of switching songs. Since version 4.1, certain changes in the notification appearance have appeared, such as big view notifications. They make it possible to place much more information and buttons in the notifications. We can display lists of messages that appeared, or enable the user to respond to, modify, or delete data. In the next module, we'll deal with the implementation of the intent service, as well as with notifications in our application. We'll be able to use them to refresh certain data in the background, as well as to inform that new elements have appeared.